You know, the material you sent over this week? Wow, the situation down in Kerala, it's really something else.
It is quite a tangled web.
Yeah, centering on Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan and his daughter Veena T and her company Exalogic Solutions.
That's right. And this whole thing seems to hinge on a payment, a pretty large one.
Yeah, 2.73 crore. That's a chunk of change. From Cochin Minerals and Rutile Ltd, CMRL, to Exalogic.
And that specific transaction is what's really caught the eye of the Serious Fraud Investigation Office, the SFIO. They've flagged it.
So that's what we're diving into, right? Trying to get past the headlines on this one.
Exactly. Unpack the key pieces. Because you've got politics, these big payments, and, well, a father defending his daughter quite strongly.
And the timing is key, too, with the chief minister making that public statement just yesterday, Wednesday, the 9th of April.
Right. It grounds the whole thing. So the core issue really is this. The SFIO seems to think maybe no services were actually provided for that money.
Versus the defense, which is Pinarayi Vijayan, Exalogic, CMRL. They're all saying, no, this was legit for services rendered.
It's a fundamental disagreement. Was there a service or wasn't there?
It reminds me of that dosa stall analogy you mentioned.
Right, yeah. It's like you go up, you order, you pay for this amazing dosa you're expecting,
You hand over the cab.
and then nothing. No dosa. Just you've paid, and that's it.
So the SFIO is kind of saying CMRL paid for a dosa they never got.
That's the essence of it, yeah. A big fat check, as the material put it, but maybe. No actual work done. Nada.
Okay, so let's dig into that payment specifically. 2.73 crore, the players. Veena T and Exalogic getting the money.
CMRL paying it.
And the SFIO asking the tough questions. What exactly is making them so suspicious? Is it just the amount?
Well, the amount is definitely part of it, but it seems to be more about the lack of proof. Documentation.
Like invoices, work orders, project reports.
Exactly. The SFIO is basically saying, look, for this kind of money, where's the paper trail? Where's the evidence of what Exalogic actually did for CMRL?
And they're not finding it, apparently.
That seems to be the crux of their suspicion, an absence of the usual deliverables you'd expect.
Which does look suspicious on the face of it, a big payment, but fuzzy details on the why. But then you have the chief minister, Pinarayi Vijayan, coming out really strong in defense of his daughter.
Oh, absolutely. Very firm stance, backing her and her company completely.
He didn't mince words, did he? Saying things like, certain people are baying for my blood.
Yeah, and that line about his blood's not on the discount rack. That really stood out.
Definitely projecting this image of being under attack, but defiant. So what's the substance of his defense beyond the strong words?
Well, the main argument is that the transaction itself was completely legitimate, above board.
How so?
He's pointing to the fact that taxes were paid, both GST and income tax, apparently, and that the money moved through nationalized banks. Standard procedures. He's saying, look, there are receipts, there are bank records, it's all traceable.
So transparent financial trails? If that's all true, where does the SFIO's case come from, in his view?
Well, that's where he pivots. He basically calls the whole SFIO investigation a political vendetta.
Right. He thinks they're targeting him politically.
Yes, using his daughter's company as a way to get at him. He even pointed to the SFIO report itself.
What about it?
He said it starts right off the bat by highlighting she's Pinarayi's daughter.
Framing it immediately through the family connection.
Exactly. He sees that as proof of their motive. That it's not about the transaction, it's about him.
And he brought up the Bunish Kodieri case, too, didn't he, to draw a contrast?
Yeah, he made a distinction, saying that in Veena's case, the focus was immediately on the family link right from the start, which he argues shows it's a targeted attack.
Interesting comparison. So his line is, legitimate transaction, political attack. What about the other companies involved? Exalogic and CMRL. Are they singing the same tune?
Pretty much, yeah. Everything we've seen suggests they are backing the chief minister's version. They both insist the payment was for services.
Okay, so everyone on that side agrees services were rendered, but what service?
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or, well, the 2.73 crore question.
Exactly. The material we looked at asked, was it IT consulting, software development, a really elaborate PowerPoint? It's just unclear.
That ambiguity is definitely a sticking point. It fuels the skepticism. If it was a clear-cut service, you'd think they'd be shouting it from the rooftops, providing details.
Right. We did X, Y, and Z for them. The lack of specifics is telling, maybe.
It certainly raises questions. And it inevitably leads to the whole nepotism angle.
Which the opposition is definitely seized upon.
Oh, absolutely. Their argument is pretty straightforward.
Mm.
Would Exalogic have even gotten this deal if Veena wasn't the chief minister's daughter?
That question again. If she weren't Pinarayi's kid, would CMRL have even glanced her way? It's a potent accusation.
It taps right into concerns about influence and access based on family ties.
So how does Pinarayi Vijayan counter that specific charge, the nepotism claim?
He dismisses it, calls it pure nonsense, says there's no evidence, no legal basis for it, just political mudslinging.
He's sticking to the legitimate business deal narrative.
Correct. But, as you know, even if everything was technically by the book.
Use the optics.
Yes, exactly. The appearance of it. The chief minister's daughter's company getting a big contract from CMRL. It just looks questionable to a lot of people, regardless of the facts.
It's like that analogy they used about the small business owner whose uncle is well connected.
Right. Even if the deal is fair, people are going to wonder if the connection played a role. It erodes trust.
It really does. And this also brings up comparisons within the CPM itself, right? The whole double standards argument, especially concerning the Benish Kodieri situation.
Yes, that criticism has surfaced. Some are asking if the party is handling this situation differently than they handled the scrutiny around Kodieri's son. Is there a different standard for the current CM's family?
And Pinarayi's explanation for that difference?
Again, he points to how the issue was raised. He maintains that the focus wasn't initially on Kodieri himself in Benish's case, but in Veena's case, the SFIO immediately linked it to him, Pinarayi.
So for him, it's about the framing indicating political intent from the start.
That's his argument, that this difference proves it's an attack on him personally.
And the CPM party leadership, they seem to be backing him up on this interpretation?
It appears so. When he says things like, we're not blind to the game here, it suggests the party sees it similarly, as a political maneuver.
Okay. So we've got the financial details, the accusations, the defenses, the political context. Let's pivot to the public. What's really at stake here for the average person in Kerala?
Fundamentally, it's about trust. Trust in government. Is power being used appropriately? Are deals happening fairly? Or is there potential for personal gain influencing things?
That's huge in any democracy. And also, doesn't a big controversy like this risk overshadowing other important stuff?
Absolutely. It can become a major distraction. When all the headlines and energy are focused here, other critical issues facing the state might get less attention. Governance can suffer.
Plus the money itself. 2.73 crore. The source material made a good point. What else could that money do?
Yeah, thinking about schools, roads, healthcare, it puts the amount into perspective. Was this the best use of those resources, assuming it was a legitimate payment? And if not, well.
And right now it feels like a standoff. The SFIO suspects no service. The other side insists there was. But there's no definitive proof either way, is there? No smoking gun.
Not that we know of yet. No killer invoice, no email thread saying, don't worry about the work, just send the money. It's still in that gray area of allegation versus defense.
Which leads to the political fallout. Pinarayi Vijayan is a major figure.
Undeniably. Hugely influential in Kerala politics.
And family scandals. They can be an Achilles heel for any leader, no matter how powerful.
It's often seen as a vulnerability, yes. And you can be sure the opposition parties are watching this very, very closely.
Ready to capitalize on any perceived weakness?
Exactly. It becomes political ammunition.
That quote from the ex-user really hit that nail on the head, didn't it? About trying to tarnish his reputation if they can't beat him at the polls.
It highlights that cynical aspect of politics sometimes, where damaging a reputation is seen as a valid strategy. Perception becomes reality.
It really does. Now, it wasn't all serious. The source did mention some of the, let's say, more satirical takes emerging.
Yeah, a bit of gallows humor, perhaps. The idea of Pinarayi presenting a bank statement like a proud parent with a report card.
Or the thought that maybe Veena's company is just too boring to be crooked, a sort of mundane defense.
It injects a little lightness, acknowledging the absurdity that can sometimes surround these things, and the image of the opposition as maybe slightly bumbling amateur detectives.
Right. Maybe not quite cracking the case.
And it all comes back to that grounding thought, the average person worried about potholes while this high-level drama plays out.
Keeps things in perspective. So, zooming out one last time, what's the bigger picture here? How does this fit into broader trends?
Well, it's definitely part of a larger pattern, the intense scrutiny on political leaders and especially their families. It happens everywhere, but it seems particularly sharp in the Indian context right now.
And sorting out the truth from the political spin is Well, it's tough.
Incredibly difficult. Everyone has an angle, an agenda. Pinarayi insists the SFIO is biased.
The SFIO presumably sees itself as doing its job impartially.
And Veena herself, staying silent, which might be strategic.
So the investigation continues. What happens next is anyone's guess, really. Could go to court, maybe new evidence pops up.
Or maybe it just fizzles out eventually. We don't know. The SFIO is still digging, though.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, we have these two starkly different stories. The SFIO saying we don't see evidence of services for this 2.73 crore payment.
And on the other side, a unified front. The chief minister, Exalogic, CMRL, all saying, yes, services were provided, taxes paid, everything legitimate.
But that key detail, what services exactly, remains frustratingly vague.
That's the lingering question mark hanging over the whole thing.
So for everyone listening, there's a lot to weigh up. The government's defense, the opposition's claims of nepotism, the implications for trust.
And maybe stepping back from the day-to-day politics of it, it makes you think, doesn't it? About just how much scrutiny families of public figures are under these days.
Yeah, in this media environment, trying to figure out what's real and what's political strategy, it's a challenge.
Definitely something to mull over. How do we navigate these complex stories where facts and motivations get so tangled?
That's a great thought to leave folks with. Clearly, this story isn't over yet. We'll have to keep watching. Thanks for digging into this with me.
My pleasure. It's certainly a fascinating, ongoing situation.